That's cool. Hey, everybody, welcome. We're live. Today is Sunday, September 15th, 2019, unless you're watching it later, of course. This is the Atheist Experience, sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of religion and government. We take live calls. People call in to tell us what they believe and why. I got some announcements to do, but I'm Matt Dillahunty, the kind of regular-ish host of the show, but I am so pleased because today we have Gayle Jordan, who is not only a good friend of mine and a wonderful person and mother, but American Atheist of the Year and the executive director of the Recovering from Religion Foundation, or recoveringfromreligion.org. It's been a hot minute. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a delight and a joy and a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and for those people who are like, how can they just keep having people on from Recovering from Religion? Wasn't Daryl just on the show? Yes, he was. And I would have somebody on from Recovering from Religion all the time if we could, because quite frankly, I would imagine there are several callers we're going to get to today that could make good use of that resource.
Benefit from it, right. We have a 24-hour telephone chat, so if you can't get in here and you need to talk to somebody, 1-844-I-DOUBT-IT.
And we'll get all that information and other stuff up as well. It'll probably also be in the links associated with this when the video goes out. A couple quick announcements after this is over. At 6:15 p.m. Central, there'll be an episode of Secular Sexuality that will be airing immediately following this. Also, next Saturday is the annual Atheist Community of Austin Bat Cruise. And Dave Warnock, who you saw on the show recently, will be coming down to give a talk. We have 2 boats this year as opposed to 1 in previous years. We are sold out. So if you waited and were just planning to go online and get tickets now, you can no longer buy tickets at the website. We do have a couple extras, and every year there are a couple people buy tickets who don't show up, or a couple people buy extra tickets. And if you show up at the event at Trinity United to listen to Dave speak, which is free and open to the public, you can talk to somebody there to find out where we are as far as filling the boats to capacity, but we had to stop selling tickets. And so thank you to everybody who's already bought tickets. We look forward to hanging out with you. And I think what we're going to end up doing is there's a big boat and a smaller boat, and the big boat's going to have, Dave as our guest and a bunch of other people involved. And then I'm going to go on the smaller boat with all the people who,
Didn't get on the big boat.
Didn't get on the big boat, or I'll probably do some magic and hang out, and we'll have fun. So that's what's coming up as far as ACA events. So yeah, you can't get tickets on the website anymore. There is a slim chance if you show up on the day of the event that we might have a few extras to give out, or help some people as best we can, because you never know whether we're going to completely fill the boats or not.
Sure.
On that note, how are you?
So good. Thank you for asking. I am so pleased to be here. And yes, we did have Daryl on here not too terribly long ago, although it was all the way back in June. But as Matt said, we can't say enough about Recovering from Religion, and we are so grateful for your support and for the space to be able to tell about it.
So for those who aren't aware and who didn't pay attention the last time, recoveringfromreligion.org, this is, it's almost 10 years now?
10-year anniversary.
10-year anniversary? Mm-hmm. And there's a retreat happening as well.
The same time as the Bat Cruise. It's this coming weekend. This is the first time we've ever done a real-time, in-person weekend religion recovery retreat. It's in a retreat setting in the cool mountains of North Carolina. It's next weekend, and it's all about. We've billed it as embrace your nature. It's all about stepping back into the position of being a human being, and sometimes where religion steps in and subverts us from our natural nature, it is recreating that and reconstructing that. And so that's what the weekend's all about, and we're so looking forward to it. Everything we do at Recovering from Religion helps. We try to answer the question, how can we help? And when people start to doubt and leave their faith, we have some options to provide them for some help. And this was an opportunity that we saw that we decided, let's give it a shot. So this is our first go. We hope to do it again in the future. We'll see how it goes this weekend.
Maybe in the future we just won't plan it as the same weekend as
Maybe
the
we should do that. We will check in.
Coordinate a little bit, because I'd like to go.
We will check in, and I want to do the Bat Cruise. Yeah. So, sure.
So now, I talked to Daryl not too long ago, shortly after he was on here, and we had a good conversation about people, the number of calls increasing and stuff after we talked about it, which always surprises me, because as someone who's involved in the movement, has been involved in this from the get-go, every time I meet somebody who hasn't already heard about recovering from religion, it's like, have you been under a rock, And so people will call us, and hopefully we'll get some calls like that today where there are people who are, perhaps in need of those resources. But you guys have the hotline, which you already gave the number for, online chat with volunteers.
Also 24 hours.
And who can or should call or join for chat?
Anybody. We've got folks from anywhere on the spectrum to call in. We have folks for whom the ground is just beginning to be a little soft in their belief, and they just want to ask some questions. And so our trained agents are standing by for those calls and chats and are willing to have a non-judgmental place where people can express their doubts and ask their questions. In addition to that, we have resources that we can provide. Sometimes people call in and they've been a non-believer for years, and yet there's this lingering fear of hell or this lingering religious artifact that's troubling them, and that's okay too. And so they call in, and our agents are there to listen. They're there to provide resources. We also, in addition to that, we are able to provide. We have created an online community. So after a chat or a call, when our agents feel like somebody could benefit from a little bit more time and a little bit more sharing, they're invited into the community. They self-select the subgroups that they want to belong to, LGBT or military or wherever from of the spectrum you are from. You can join as many as you want, and it's in there that they meet other people who are on a similar journey, dealing with similar struggles, shared language, shared experiences. And so our online community is another feature that we've added, as well as our local support group. So we've tried to cover every possible need, which is why, of course, we've added this open weekend retreat to be able to help people where they are and what their needs are.
And how many local, in-person support groups have you got where people can go and meet with people in person?
We have those in about 22 cities in the U.S. We have big plans to be able to, you set your goals every year, and our goal is to have them we'd like to have one in every state by this time next year, have a city support group, a local support group in every state by this time next year. When we get a dedicated volunteer, we provide the training, we underwrite the cost of the meetup page so that group can get together, and then those groups take on a personality of their own. If they want to meet once a week or once a month, or if they want to meet at the coffee shop or on Sundays, whatever it is they want to do, their leader will schedule a time, and it is pure peer support. And you know what that means? It's a place to talk it through. It's a place to express fear. It's a place to ask questions, maybe get some resources. And so we're trying to meet people where they are, whatever it is that they need.
So one of the things, there are tons of resources that we'll reference on the show from time to time, Recovering from Religion, Secular Therapist Project, Grief Beyond Belief, Foundation Beyond Belief, and we were lucky to work with a number of those organizations. One of the common threads that we've dealt with over the 14 plus years that I've been hosting the show is people will call up and say, well, I live in this town and I'm the only atheist here. And it has been incredibly frustrating to watch religious organizations who have this privileged position in our society already and kind of de facto, they have their tax-free exempt status without doing anything or showing anything in the public interest. But they have communities, and they've had this leg up for building communities. And people will look around and say, well, religious people give more to charity than atheist people. Yes, but that's because religious organizations have had this position of being able to guilt people into donating and having a convenient place to do that. But when you donate to a religion, you have no idea how much of your dollar is going to anything good that you actually support, because they don't have to open their books. For the rest of us who are running 501c3s, our books are open. You know what our effectiveness is with dollar amounts and things like that. But hearing that there's over 20 cities now that have an actual group where you can go meet someone in person to have those conversations, these are the types of communities we've been hoping to build for ages and more. Not every, if we had a Recovering from Religion in every city in the United States, awesome. Apart from the fact that it demonstrates just how much recovery is needed. But there are also other communities that address other parts of the whole person. It's one of the things that I'm happiest about with the Atheist Community of Austin over the last couple of years. For the longest time, even before we had a building, it was, hey, there's a Sunday meetup, and when we do the Atheist Experience, and we'll do nonprofits as a recorded podcast and Godless Bitches and stuff like that. Now we're in a building, which is a proper community center. It's open 7 days a week from roughly 11 to 9. There are people here playing games and having philosophy meetups and having support group things. And it just struck me that we don't actually have like a recovering from religion meetup thing. So we'll fix that.
We'll fix that.
We can fix that relatively quickly. But building community centers, whether they focus on a specific narrow field, like the recovering from religion, or community centers like the Atheist Community of Austin, where we're now producing content that isn't just the Atheist Experience and nonprofits and Godless Bitches. There's Secular Sexuality, which I mentioned is going to be premiering after this. That's also tied to Daryl Ray. Then there's, we've got Parenting Beyond Belief and Atheist Vanguard, and we're working to make sure we address the whole person, not just those of you who want to watch an argument about religion. But for those of you who do, you came to the right place. And we've got loads of calls. You want to start digging in on some calls?
Absolutely. I'm ready when you are.
You got have you picked out a favorite that you might want to start with?
I'm going to leave that to you, Matt. You are the big boss.
Well, we'll start with John in Connecticut. You're on with Matt and Gayle. Thanks for waiting.
Hi. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hi. Thank you for having me on the show.
You're welcome. What do you got for us?
So I just have a problem I would like a little guidance with, and I was hoping maybe you can help me out with that. So just a little introduction. I was raised Catholic, but it has the whole religion just had a very negative influence on my whole life. I would even say that it ruined a good part of my life. Mm-hmm. I would like to leave the religion. I would just like to forget about it, but the problem is I can't help but be convinced of the existence of God for various reasons. And I was hoping maybe you could give me, poke holes in the arguments or something, just to give me a little advice.
I'm always happy to try to poke holes in arguments in favor of religion. So what's like the biggest thing that keeps you convinced that there's a God?
Okay, there's two. I would say that there's two categories. One is the logical, philosophical argument, and the other one is personal experience. But I'll start with the logical, philosophical one.
Okay.
So, you know how there's the argument from contingency that the universe has to have a non-contingent cause, like an uncaused cause, and that's what keeps me chained to this faith, because I feel like there's no argument against that. Like how can you explain matter and energy without a supernatural first cause?
So what you're doing here is saying, hey, there's a puzzle. We don't know how or why there's something instead of nothing. And then you're saying, how could you possibly explain that with anything other than a supernatural origin? Well, I'm not convinced that a supernatural appeal solves the problem, but you're assuming that you, in fact, have an explanation or should have an explanation. And it seems to me that perhaps the best right answer is we don't know why there's something rather than nothing. We just know that there is, because the path that you go down with contingency arguments is, okay, well, it's contingent on something. What can I say about that something? What are the characteristics or the qualities of that? And all of that is just speculative. Like, even if it was required that there was some thinking agent being who had to think the universe or reality into existence, there's nothing that says that being still exists or that it cares about who you are or what you do or has relayed any information to anybody else. So even those arguments don't get you to anything close to religion. And so what you wind up with is a big placeholder. Hey, I need an explanation for this. And so this God explanation seems to work, but how many others might work? Universe creating pixies or a multiverse type of explanation.
Right. Well, I mean, that's not very important to me because personally, I've researched all religions, and I don't like
That's a lie.
either of them. Like, I don't want
you don't like either of them. You've really researched all religions, and you don't like either of them.
Well, I mean, the mainstream ones like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, even Hinduism. It's just I find them. I just find them to be. I'm trying to find a nice word. They're not appealing.
Okay. Well, sometimes the truth isn't appealing, so that doesn't seem to be a very good argument for you dismissing all those religions. But what then are you left believing?
Well, since I can't explain the existence of matter and energy without
Me neither. I can't explain it with the supernatural explanation either. The supernatural doesn't have any explanatory power. You're trying to solve a mystery by appealing to a bigger mystery. And all you're doing in that case is making yourself feel more comfortable and pretend like you have a better explanation when you don't.
I see. That's a good point. Well, I mean, then I guess I'll ask the second part of my question. I mean, the second thing which keeps me believing. It may sound kind of silly, but I believe I've had personal experiences that are supernatural. One main one that I keep having are synchronicities, and like every time I have them, they just stress me out because I interpret them as like a sign from God that like He is real and that I should believe it and that I should keep following this religion. So that's the other thing.
John, you've put with the way you explained your question and presented your question, you've put a lot of thought and study into this. I can tell that you knew the answer to those questions before you asked them. My question back to you, I understand that you're trying to do the reasonable, logical thing. You're trying to tell yourself repeatedly, this doesn't make sense, this is unreasonable, but you're having these weirdness about the whatever it was you said. You started your conversation by saying how detrimental religion was to your life. In fact, you used language that said it ruined parts of your life. And my question to you is, as you have done this journey away, can you be patient with yourself? Is it interfering in your life that you've got this constant scroll across your brain saying maybe God's real, maybe God's real? Is it interfering with your life? Can you be patient with yourself enough to go, you know what? Every time those feelings arise, every time those thoughts come to your mind, if you say, I know it's not reasonable, but it's still there. That's the insidious nature of religion. That's what indoctrination is. That's what it does to us, is it plants thoughts in our brain. And so could you be patient enough with yourself to just let those thoughts come and go and continue to remind yourself that this is not real, this is not reasonable? Is it interfering in your life much?
It is a pretty big source of stress for me right now because it's like I can ignore all the laws because, I mean, it's the laws which stress me out the most. Like, I can ignore them and just do my own thing anyway, but then it's like I have that fear in the back of my mind, like, oh, like this is not allowed, like, oh, what if God is real? What's going to happen to me? Is He going to punish me now? Like, I can't enjoy certain things because, like, it's always in the back of my mind, and it's very depressing.
Yeah. So first of all, you seem to be a prime candidate for benefiting from recovering from religion. The one issue I want to make on like the synchronicity thing. We have a massive tendency to look for and find agency even when agency isn't involved. And the sort of coincidental things that happen in life, it's very desirable for us to find a pattern so that the world doesn't feel as potentially random and indifferent to us as it may well be. An interesting one, I won't tell you the person's name, but I have a friend that I haven't spoken to in a few months, and last night or the night before, I was watching documentaries and stuff on Amazon Prime, I think it was, and in the credits for this documentary was this person's name as an executive producer for this particular documentary. And within 10 minutes of me seeing that, that person sent me a text message. Now, it's very easy for me to look at that and see how other people can go, oh, wow, there's this amazing coincidence. And yes, it is. But for me to say there must be something behind it that's, causing these things to be, aligned is just a mistake, because I would also have to look at all of the other times I heard or thought of that person's name and they didn't send me a text message or a call. And if you were trying to use the synchronicity of an event as an argument for believing that there's some governing mind behind all of this, wouldn't you also, if you're going to be intellectually honest, have to take every instance where there wasn't synchronicity and compile those as arguments against a God governing?
I never thought of it like that. I guess it's a good point.
Everybody's had the experience, especially older people, when phones still hung on the wall. Almost everybody's had the experience of having the phone ring and just knowing who it was before you picked it up, and you're right. The thing is, how many times did you think you knew who it was and you were wrong? How many times did you not think you knew who it was and, it was either unexpected or you portray it into this? These sorts of things happen. And it's not always a mistake to look for a pattern, but when you get into that hyper pattern recognition mode where you're looking for connections everywhere, that's the type of thinking that leads to conspiracy theorist stuff. It's the type of thinking that leads to becoming convinced of the supernatural and religious claims, even when there isn't actually evidence for it. And one of the questions that I think may be useful isn't necessarily how many times has this happened where I didn't recognize it, or how many times did I not recognize it otherwise. What is the purpose? Like, let's assume that my synchronicity example is actually evidence for a God mind or something. What purpose would this God have of synchronizing these events? Me watching a documentary and getting a text message.
I feel like he's doing that to warn me, to let me know that, that he does exist, and that's why he's causing these things to happen, because.
But does that make sense? Because if God wants you to know he exists, how difficult would it be for God just to reveal himself directly to you, to let you know that he exists?
That's true. I thought about that too.
Yeah, why has God got to play charades? And it's very much, and I don't mean this to be insulting to you or anybody else, but we're all familiar with the scenario of like an unrequited love scenario, where there's someone that you have a crush on, and you start to see things from them, and the confirmation bias builds up that, well, maybe they like me too. And the only way to know whether or not they actually like you, or whether you're building this up in your head, is to have a conversation with them and then judge things based on that conversation and the actions that follow. And so even if God is out there saying, you know what, I'm gonna make him make a wrong turn and meet this person over here in order to make this connection, and then he'll know that I know and love and care about him, that's preposterous, because if God wants you to know that he loves and cares about you, he can just tell you and show you, and not play puppet master hiding in the bushes.
Yes,
true. A God that worked like that, wouldn't that God be like a dick?
Yeah, I totally agree. But
kind of an ass. Yeah. An ass. We'll go with ass. Not that there's anything wrong with asses either. But it's kind of what's happened here is that religious ideas have taken hold in your head and have triggered your particular fears, whether they be about loneliness or whether you're loved or cared for, and religion plays on those things. And now you start to see what it is that you need to see or want to see, and just start asking yourself the questions: does this make any sense? Why couldn't God just, I don't. It reminds me of the people who look at the Bible and say, "Oh, well, God authorizes all kinds of horrific shit, but He had to speak to people at that time in a way that they could understand." Well, no, He's God. He should be able to speak to anybody at any time, and they should understand him. If God can talk to people and they can't understand him, isn't that God's fault anyway for making us incapable of understanding him?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you.
Well, then you're probably right. But don't just take one phone call and one little conversation and go charging off, because I think that's probably how you got in this mess in the first place, is not pausing to think things through. So I'd recommend reaching out to recoveringfromreligion.org. There's chat services there. There's the hotline. And I know we didn't mention it earlier, but my good friend Anthony Magnabosco, famous for the street epistemology stuff, has been training some of the volunteers.
Some of our agents. And so, John, let me encourage you you can call the number. You can do the online chat if you prefer that. You also will have the opportunity to join an online community where you can... Your thoughts are valid. Your concern is valid. Even your fear is valid. It's, as I said, it's what religion does. And talking through it and reminding yourself that it's not reasonable, and talking to someone else and expressing all that.
It's just a philosophical question keeps coming up, like, how can there be something rather than nothing? Isn't the right answer, I don't know? Yes, but
it's not a very comforting answer.
No.
But it's the right one.
I mean, at a certain point, you just have to, because the way I think is, okay, so the universe is composed of matter and energy. Matter and energy don't explain themselves. So what else can there be that I mean, it's just, sorry. It just like, I just feel like it just has to be something outside of matter and energy.
But you know reasonably and logically, John, you can explain those answers as good as Matt could. When you presented your question, you know the logical, reasonable answer. What you're having is an emotional response to this trauma that you had as a believer, believing these things. And I am assuming that because this keeps coming to your mind unbidden, that this is connected to your fear of judgment, your fear of hell. Of course. And so you know all of that. You know it all on a logical sense. This is just an emotional thing that you have to let your logical mind overtake your emotional experience. And that's why I think going to some kind of a helpline or a chat line, or being in a community where you can talk this through, will help reinforce what it is you know to be true.
Yes.
And on that note,
Thank you.
I'm gonna move us on to other callers. I'm glad you found this helpful, and we hope that you, even if you don't reach out to Recovering from Religion, finding an organization and people in your area so that you can have a conversation about these things is great. And if there isn't already a group in your area, then there's the possibility to potentially start one.
Absolutely.
Our little organization started with an ad in a newspaper and some people meeting at a coffee shop, and now it's a global empire that I am now in charge of as the puppet master. I just have somebody will clip that out and put it in the next conspiracy video. But anyway, thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
All right, thank you.
Cheers. Oop. Well, we've got Aaron in Pennsylvania. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
I'm pretty well.
Well, so the reason I called is that I'm in recovery from alcohol, and I have been going to these, AA 12-step meetings, and it's a complete God religion-based type of deal, and so they preach strict adherence to the rules and so on. And a man in my position is having a difficult time with this simply because I'm not going to pray to the magic bolt thrower in the sky twice a day. I'm not going to call somebody my higher power. And so, if I'm going to do a 12-step recovery type deal, and their whole basis is God, then my foundation of recovery is going to be bullshit.
Yeah, I'm on record as being strongly opposed to Alcoholics Anonymous and 12-step programs for a number of reasons. They don't publish their recidivism rates. They, if you work the program and you stay sober, you count, and as soon as you don't work the program, you're no longer counted. So you don't know how effective their actual methods are. I think that personally, I'm convinced that they're in the position of substituting one addiction for another, where you replace your substance addiction with an addiction to the group or the program and everything else. And yet I'm still on record also as saying, if Alcoholics Anonymous is helping to keep you sober, then I'm happy about that, and you should continue. There are other options. There's SOS, which is secular sobriety. Unfortunately, a lot of these secular programs don't have a presence everywhere. There may not be one in your town. And apart from Googling to potentially find other solutions in your area, I don't know that I have anything else.
Smart Recovery is one. Aaron, have you been able to try any of those secular groups?
I'm familiar with the one that you just mentioned, Smart, but I haven't been able to actually reach out to them at this point.
It's also
scheduling and so on.
Sure. It's also worth noting that every time I talk about Alcoholics Anonymous, I hear from atheists who are in recovery and in Alcoholics Anonymous, and they're like, oh my gosh, stop being so mean to Alcoholics Anonymous because it's saving lives. It may be. And as I said, if that's what's actually working for somebody, I know that I've been told that there are AA groups that are almost entirely full of atheists, and where all the talk about the higher power is basically a MacGuffin that just consider yourself or humanity or love or whatever to be your higher power. And I have my concerns with that, but I'm not an addict and I'm not in recovery. And at the end of the day, whatever is actually making someone's life healthier, even if it's a confusing, comforting lie, I'm fine with that, at least until we can find a way to do it without the comforting lie.
Well, I understand what you're saying as far as both of those are concerned. And yes, I can say that they have helped a great many people. And if you're a theist and you have a sincere, deep-rooted belief, then this probably is a fantastic program. And, maybe in Austin or some more progressive type communities, they have a little bit more of a secular attitude toward it. Where I am, I'm in Pennsylvania and a little bit north of Philadelphia. So I'm sort of in the middle of the Bible Belt, and that doesn't help. We have people around here say, if you don't find God, then just, go pick the bottle back up.
That seems to be a pretty shitty thing to say,
Aaron,
no matter what.
I'm sorry you're having that experience. My org, Recovering from Religion, it's not specifically related to recovery from addiction, but we might be able to help. There's certainly people on the phone that you could speak with. If you go to our resources tab, we endorse the Smart Recovery Program, and if you click on there, maybe something will have popped up, in your area. My heart goes out to you. I understand how hard the recovery road is in the first place, and then to be compounded by this extra layer of the supernatural piece that you've worked hard to reject and that you don't want to participate in. I understand that, and I'm sorry that you're having that experience. Please join us on the helpline or in the chat line if you feel like that might give you a little bit of help. And in the meantime, keep looking for an alternative to it. And as Matt said, if you can bypass the religious piece, I know the groups require adherence, but if you can bypass the religious piece and it's helping you because you're there with other folks that can share in your journey, keep doing it and just try to suspend that part of it.
Yeah, that's been that's been my pathway so far. I believe that I'm intelligent enough to boil down the steps to their core, and a lot of the God stuff is, in essence, it's repeating a mantra. And
yeah, I have a problem with them right from the outset.
Could be helped by that. Yeah.
Right off the bat,
me if I had
what's the first step? Recognizing that you are powerless in the face. I think that's bullshit. I think that if the whole program is to empower you, then it's not that you're powerless. It's that you currently don't have the tools and the skills to be as powerful as you need to be. But making this, and actually there's a video that I'm going to be doing probably in the next week, which touches on a number of things. But the example that I came up with to illustrate a point is that you can give someone a ticket for driving while intoxicated, but you can't give someone a ticket for being an alcoholic. And we all recognize that. And yet, for some reason, mental health issues, addictions, they often put the person in a position where that individual is being disparaged for something that is beyond their control or beyond their immediate control. And what we should be doing, and what programs like Smart Recovery and SOS and others, and even just a therapist using, cognitive behavioral therapy, things like that, is giving people the skills to address the problems in their life in a healthy, science-based way. And so, if you're having to make do with AA and there are parts of it that are problematic for you, I'd start looking into other options, but also don't look into the option of just giving up and, reaching back for the bottle like people were suggesting. That should never be an option.
Well, that's the reason why I'm trying to search elsewhere, because honestly, I'm in the program and I'm doing it because I want to achieve and maintain sobriety. That is the ultimate goal here, and whatever the means is to achieve that ends, then that's what it's going to have to be.
Yeah, and I would argue, with absolutely no expertise behind me, just my own thought, that's probably the most important thing to recovery, is having that honest desire to seek recovery. It's probably the secret sauce that makes any program potentially work. Because if you haven't gotten to the point where this is something you want, it's unlikely that you're gonna follow it through.
Good luck.
Agreed, 100%. Well, thank you both.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it, and keep up the good work, guys.
Thank you very much, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron.
We've got, here we go, AC in Illinois with a simple proof that shows that atheism is dead. I don't understand what that means, AC.
Yeah. Hi, Gayle, and hi, Matt. I thought I would just have a title that would, catch your guys' attention, but I certainly do want to talk about a proof, and that I believe shows that, at least that, I'll just put it that I think atheism is not possible by logic. And I think that you guys kind of went into it a little bit with the first caller. But, I think one thing that might help me, before I just ask a couple questions is, when you guys say atheist, do you mean like you for sure know there is not a God?
No,
or
I don't for sure know. I don't for sure know. I don't for sure know anything. I don't think there's a path to absolute certainty anywhere. Atheism, in its simplest form, could be viewed as non-theism. I am not convinced that a God exists.
Okay.
How is that dead?
Well, the idea, again, just going back to, so is that more like agnostic then, to say you don't know?
Well, agnostic and atheist aren't two things that are mutually exclusive. You can be an agnostic atheist, because theism and atheism is about what you believe, and Gnosticism and agnosticism is about what you claim to know. So my position, no matter what you call it, is I am not convinced a God exists. And in some cases, depending on the God, I may actually be convinced that a God doesn't exist, or that a particular God doesn't exist. But never am I asserting certainty, even when I'm asserting a belief that a particular God doesn't exist. So my position is one that can't possibly be dead.
Okay. And I think I more meant like it's, to me, when I go into, my little questioning here, I just think it would be impossible. I don't mean to say dead. I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything like that. But, the idea here, that you guys would, I'm sure, agree that the Big Bang has some kind of starting point. I've heard some people say that, the universe has always existed, but, that I think would be impossible, just because if it has an infinite beginning, it wouldn't have a starting point. So we would probably both agree that
no, we wouldn't.
Big Bang has a starting point.
No.
Sorry, go ahead.
So first of all, Big Bang cosmology is the current best model to explain the facts surrounding the time just after what we would describe as the origin of the universe. Now, whether or not that model is completely accurate, there are people working on alternative cosmologies, et cetera, but we are prevented from looking back beyond the Big Bang. And current physics models basically would argue that since time began with the Big Bang, then there was never a time when there wasn't a universe. And talking about anything before the Big Bang is nonsensical, because how can there be a before time? But at the end of the day,
Sure.
The fact that you find it absurd that something might have existed forever certainly isn't in any way, what you find absurd isn't particularly relevant, but aren't you getting ready to point to something else that has existed forever?
Well, I know. I'm just saying that the universe, because it's subject to space and time, couldn't have always existed, because if something had an infinite beginning, it could never catch up to the present. That's all I'm just trying to say. I mean, and I think that that's a side point.
So,
I think
so something that is infinite in the past can't catch up to the present.
That is subject to space and time, like the universe.
What example do we have of anything that is not subject to space and time?
Well, nothing in the known universe.
Right. So we literally know of nothing that is not bounded by space and time, right?
Yeah, that's what I just said. Exactly right. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So then you can't make an argument for a God that is not bounded by space and time while simultaneously acknowledging that we know of nothing that isn't bounded by space and time.
Within the confines of the universe. So let me just, here's my question here. So, if we believe that the universe had to have some kind of origin, that was your word, origin, everything that has an origin that we've observed, going back to what we know, what we've observed, has some kind of initiation, has some kind of cause. The reason a race starts, the gun goes off, you have a tree that's going to grow, you got to plant the seed first. Every origin has some kind of cause or initiation. So, and this is kind of what my logic is, and I'm just interested to see what you have to say about it. So the universe had some kind of origin. So if we stay within that natural order, then something had to create the universe. Now, we don't know what that is. That could be pixie fairies. That could be Jesus. That could be
a multiverse. It could be a completely different natural physical thing where there's a different physics boundary outside. So the correct answer is we don't know.
Well, then that's my thing. Like, so the point, it could, we live in a matrix. It doesn't really matter. We don't know. But this is, again, where my thinking is, if you just do an infinite regression backwards, okay, so then what created that physics that we can't even understand, or what created...
You're assuming that physics was...
You keep going... Let me just finish, and then I promise, and then I'll be done. If you just keep doing an infinite regression backwards, you run into an eternal source.
Yeah, and so what?
An infinite...
No, you don't return to an eternal source. If you do an infinite regression backwards, you're doing an infinite regression backwards. But there's no...
That would equal it.
I thought you were going to be done.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
There's no... First of all, time doesn't work in that backwards way. And tracing things backwards, once you get to the point where we don't know what lies beyond here, you don't get to just say, well, it can't go on forever, because you don't know that. And the whole... You can't say... oh, this cannot go on forever, because you have no way of demonstrating that. Once we're into the bounds of, the edge of the map where beyond here there be monsters, that's the speculation, and that's what you're doing by speculating that there was a monster that started everything. When we get to the point where the answer is, I don't know, then we need to continue searching and seeking evidence. We don't get to say, hey, you know what? We can't go back beyond the Planck time, but certainly there can't be anything that the universe couldn't be eternal in any sense. Well, you don't know that.
The thing, though, is, but if you just talk about the monsters, right, and there's something outside of the map, I mean, to me, it would just, again, you don't know for certain, but everything that we know of, like we said, going back to what we are fully aware of and things that we can observe, have some kind of origin.
It breaks down.
Let's say there was... Yes. So let's say there was like the monsters outside the map or something like that. I mean, I think that when people talk about, theism, it would be referring to potentially like those monsters that we don't know of. But to say that, and you're not, because I guess when I heard atheist, my understanding was that means that there's a certainty that there is no God.
That's absolute horseshit, which isn't the position of even the people who are active anti-theists. Very, very few of them. I know of one prominent atheist who's a shit thinker who doesn't understand anything about philosophy, there's a clip of him saying he's absolutely certain that there is no God, and there's a church getting ready to use that video. And I'm here to tell you that guy's an idiot and just a terrible human being.
That's fair.
But that's all separate from whether or not he's right. But here's the problem with the intellectual exercise of trying to analyze in your head an infinite regress. Are you familiar with like Zeno's paradox?
No.
Okay. Zeno's paradox, essentially, if you look at it, you could fire an arrow. And you could say that in order for the arrow to get to the target, it must cross half of that distance. And before it can cross half of that distance, it must cross half of the distance before that, and half the distance before that, half of the distance before that. And you can get to an intellectual exercise that shows that it's impossible for that arrow to ever reach the target because there's an infinite series of half steps that it would have to cross in the interim. And yet we know for a fact the arrow can get to the target. These intellectual exercises, anytime you are talking about infinity, there's several things that are important to remember. Number one, infinity isn't a quantity. Number two, there are multiple different usages and types of infinity. And second, you can't really do, I know there's a mathematician that's going to email me and say I'm wrong, but you can't do math, or at least not math of the type that you're trying to do with infinity. The Zeno's paradox of the arrow never being able to reach the target, while it's not a direct, concise refutation of that, demonstrates one of the many problems of when we try to start thinking about things in terms of infinity. And I'm stuck saying, as far as I can tell, I exist in a reality. I have no idea what the origin or explanation of that reality is. Is it a multiverse? Is it a God? Is it this? Is it that? I don't know. And as far as I can tell, neither does anybody else. But the people who are claiming that it must be a God are engaged in a level of speculation that they've been led to by not being comfortable with saying, I don't know. And I am unwilling to pretend that I do know when I don't.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate that answer, and I see where you're coming from on that. And again, I can't claim to say that, who could, that they for sure know what happened at the origin of the universe. And I just suppose that where a lot of people come up with the idea of theism being more possible, let's just say, for lack of a better term, than atheism, not in the sense that you're saying it, but maybe just in the sense that there's maybe more weight, is going to that argument that something, again, from the first caller, cannot come from nothing. And so
I don't know that either.
What do you mean?
I have no, so this claim, something can't come from nothing, I don't know how you'd prove that. Where was a nothing that anybody ever experimented with to show that something couldn't come from it?
Well, something, if you want to go to natural order, I mean, again, everything that has an initiation or has a starting point has some kind of initiation.
So you're looking at things within the universe and extrapolating to things outside of the universe while acknowledging that they are not the same. So already that and any potential analogy in that realm is completely broken. It's like saying, hey, this is the stuff that's gone on in my house, therefore I know what's going on outside my house. No, you don't.
Well, I'm just talking about the origin of the universe.
You don't know about the origin of the universe. You don't know anything about the origin of the universe. And you know what's funny? You know what's funny is, and this is not an appeal to authority because I'm not saying they're right, if you line up all the world's foremost experts on the origin of the universe, on Big Bang cosmology, on those sorts of things, what percentage of them think a God did it?
I have no idea.
Vanishingly small. Of all the prominent experts working in cosmological fields, First of all, as we get to higher order sciences, the likelihood that any particular scientist believes in a personal God begins to fall off dramatically. But if you take a look at the world's form, what?
Sure. But that doesn't mean that God exists or doesn't exist.
Correct. I said that at the beginning of this. I said this is not an appeal to an authority. I'm not saying they're right. But what I am saying is that you and I, and I'm assuming you don't have any expertise in cosmology.
No, certainly don't.
I don't either. And yet the two of us are on a conversation, and rather than considering what the world's foremost experts might have to say about this, you're just running with the something can't come from nothing, it couldn't have an infinite regress. And there's a really interesting quote from Carl Sagan in the book, The Varieties of Scientific Experience, which was his kind of a collection of essays that his wife put together. There was a footnote about this infinite regress thing. And somebody had said something along the lines, if we don't put a stop right here, we'd have to just keep asking more and more questions. And Sagan, and I'm butchering this, somebody can find it, but Sagan was basically, why stop? Why stop asking questions? And
right.
the reason we propose answers is either one of two things. Either that answer is wholly supported by the evidence and therefore becomes a model that we can investigate, or we propose an answer because we're uncomfortable with not having an answer. Now, which of those two fits the God model?
Well, to me, just Matt, again, with all due respect to the foremost thinkers, I haven't observed myself, or I don't know of any observation where something has come from nothing. And so the idea, well, we haven't observed it, so therefore maybe. Again,
that's the black swan fallacy. That's the black swan fallacy.
Well, I'm just saying. Well, we've never observed that. Again, and this may be a
doesn't
bad
matter,
example, but we've never observed that 2 + 2 = 3. We know every single time it equals 4. It never in any scenario equals any other number than 4.
Certainly does in base 10 and a number of others, but in any case, that 2 + 2 = 3. I don't know how that's relevant.
Well, it's because something that has an origin has always had a cause or an initiation. And so for foremost thinkers to say there's no God, I would wonder what they even first by God.
So even within the realm of the natural, the thing that you're referring to as cause or origination, this notion of causality, is a framework that we imbue reality with. It may be the fact that causality isn't even real, and that what we're seeing is just patterns changing, and at times we identify and label things because it's convenient for us. At what point did our great ape ancestors stop being apes and start being humans? There is no point. This is something that we arbitrarily say, which is why you can line up skulls from all of our ancestry, and you get different answers from different people as to which one, where did humanity begin? Oh, it was this skull. No, it was a little earlier. No, it was a little later. This is us partitioning the universe up in a way that makes sense. And so you could look at it and you could say, oh, well, as you did earlier, that in order that tree, you have to start by planting a seed. But that seed had to come from a tree.
Correct. Yep. Right.
And that had to come from a tree, which had to come from a tree. Does that mean that trees have always existed? No. We know of a time when trees didn't exist. But what was an oak tree before it was an oak tree? It was some other living matter that we would have identified as a plant. We would have identified it as distinct. And it's because these things are on cosmic timescales, and we can't think or view things in those terms. So we partition stuff up and put them in little buckets that's convenient. It may be the case that your entire and my entire understanding of causality is simply flawed. But even if it's not, we're looking at causality within the universe, and you cannot extrapolate what you see in the universe to things outside the universe while also simultaneously acknowledging that outside the universe is something that is not bound by the universe and the laws of space and time. You can't extrapolate to there. So we're just blocked. It's an incredibly unfortunate position to be in, but also we're in an incredibly fortunate position as well. And as eminent physicists have pointed out, we live in the only short period of time where we are able to get the answers that we're going to get, because as the universe continues to expand, people who come along much after us will not see the universe that gives them any information about its origin at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just fortunate that we're there.
Yeah, it's certainly a mind bender. There's no question about it. Atheists and theists aside, are been baffled by it. There's no question about it. And going back to really quick what you're saying, just about when does a tree become a tree, and there's a seed. Well, before the seed, but I agree. But then there's some things that do have origin, like you were at one point, conceived. I'm not trying to get into like the abortion debate or anything like that. But
No. I was at one point a sperm and egg uniting.
Okay, fair.
But both of those things existed before there was a me. See, me,
that's true.
Me is the label that I put on this package. But by the way, it's changing all the time. I'm not the same person I was 10 minutes ago or 10 years ago or 50 years ago. And so what's happened is over the course of my life, the definition of me changes every single instant. Look up the ship of Theseus. That's basically what we're talking about here. If you have a ship and you start replacing parts on the ship, one at a time you replace, and then 20 years down the line, there are no original parts from that ship, and yet it's still the same ship, because that's how we label things. That's how we get to a point where we understand them. That's not about what things actually are.
Sure. Yeah, I certainly see what you're saying. I think, again, just going to origin, that's the mind bender right there. And I think where theists come down, or people just in general would say, and this is again not a thing to authority, but it's like, something again. I mean, how does it? What's the explanation? How does it come from nothing? And it's certainly.
See, now that's a question.
No,
that's a question.
Yeah. I want to interrupt you here for a minute. We're back. We're kind of in a loop here. We kind of got stuck in this origins loop and lost in this whole conversation. I don't want you to discount the way this conversation started. It will be, as you go forward, the argument that you wanted to have, you weren't able to have here today. You wanted us to say that we have this absolute certainty that no God exists. That's a much more fun argument to push down than the one that we're telling you, which is we don't have confidence. We don't have a belief that God exists. So in the future, when you want to engage in a conversation with somebody, make absolutely clear that we have our definitions straight, because you've gone into a whole different direction from the time we started this. As I said, you wanted to have one argument. We gave you a definition of the word, and now you're kind of scraping. And what I want you to recognize and realize is, of all of this work that you did, talking us through all of these things, who has the more honest explanation for where we are? The people who are saying they have certainty of something, which is not this side, or the side that's saying we simply don't know? Well,
and the reason I think one of my first questions was, when you say atheist, what do you mean? So I did want to get defined. Again, the first part of the initial conversation is just hoping that you guys would pick up the call. And I wanted to...
And to be fair...
I don't have any disrespect. Yeah.
To be fair, there's mountains of confusion about the labels, about atheist, agnostic, strong atheist, weak atheist. We even got an email this week from somebody who identifies as an atheist who's confused about burden of proof and theism and atheism and all these. It's a point that we try not to make every single week, but it's something that we have to address over and over again. And one of the things, which I'm going to have to do a video on this, so thanks for prompting it, is I've already done a video about the labels. But one of the things that the secular community at large needs to realize is that there's confusion within our community about labels. There's certainly going to be confusion about confusion on the part of people who aren't a part of our community. But what we see, and this is, by the way, this is not an insult, this is just an assessment, is the people who have a religious mindset tend to view things in a top-down structure sort of thing. And so when they hear about atheist communities, things like that, there is a collection of hidden assumptions that there's some sort of top-down in our organization. Hey, what is your holy book? What is your, who are your leaders? Who are this? What is that? And that's not what atheism is at all. It's the exact opposite of that. We have no dogma, no holy books, no popes, or are there popular, famous atheists who some revere? Absolutely. But I don't know, pick one. Probably Dawkins is probably the most referenced. I know the man. I've been on stage with the man. I've had conversations at dinner with the man. We agree on some stuff. We agree on some other stuff. He's not the frickin' Pope of atheism. And if Dawkins says something, there's absolutely nothing preventing me or any other atheist from saying that's a load of crap and you shouldn't say that. That's one of the nice things about not being in any kind of top-down organization. So that's a cautionary thing of don't just like take this call and go, oh, well, Matt said blah, blah, blah. It's worth talking to a lot of people because I don't know what particular brand of religion you might subscribe to, but I was raised primarily Southern Baptist, a little Pentecostal thrown in on occasion, but I know enough about a variety of versions of Christianity that I'm constantly cautioning people, don't go after a Baptist by talking about transubstantiation, which is a Catholic doctrine. And that is kind of what you do when you assume that, oh, I'm going to call the Atheist Experience because these people are absolutely certain that there's no God.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, that's a fair point, and that's why I wanted to ask. I mean, I think that was my first question was, what do you guys believe? Rather than just launching into, well, you don't believe in a God, so therefore, da-da-da-da-da. That's why I wanted that clarifying question right off the bat. And
I believe in all kinds of things, just I don't believe in a God, and I don't believe in anything supernatural.
Okay. Well, fair enough. I mean, I appreciate your guys' time. I mean, I'm sure love to chat even further. Again, I just again with going back to origin. I mean, I just think that's why probably more people fall on the side of theism, and we've talked about it.
I think you're right.
But thank you for taking. Yeah,
I think that's why people. That's why so many people. One of the many reasons so many people fall on the side of theism. It's undeniable the majority of people on the planet fall on the side of theism. The issue is, are they correct? And that's another call. But you're welcome to call us back another time. I appreciate your time and the conversation.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Loaded up with theist callers. As a reminder, after the show's over, which will be in about, holy crap, 28 minutes? See how fast this goes?
Oh, gosh.
Anyway, down here at the Atheist Community of Austin Free Thought Library, we're just a wonderful collection of awesomeness. And if you're not here, you are deficient. So please feel free to come on down. There'll be dinner after the show. Nobody's actually told me what's going on, but any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to come down here as well. There'll be a donation jar, and it's a good time to remind folks that we appreciate not only the various YouTube donations, which I'm sure one of them is going to fly up any second here, although I can't see it, but also the supporters on Patreon and everybody who just shows up and participates and works to continue the mission of the Atheist Community of Austin, as we work alongside organizations like Recovering from Religion. I think you can see from some of the calls today and every other call from the last 14 and a half years, we have some job security here, and there are still going to be people in need, and we're still going to need more and more communities and people participating. And so if you're not participating with a community, and I'm not shaming, I realize there are some people who don't have the bandwidth or the capacity to do certain things. But don't think that your participation with an organization needs to be in the form of doing a show or doing a debate or counseling somebody or anything else. Every single organization I've run across needs countless people doing all kinds of stuff, things you would never even think of or imagine. Not just somebody to set up the chairs or somebody to, clean the building afterwards or little things. If you've got expertise in web stuff. Hey, we live in an internet world. It'd be nice if people had better websites. Yes, that includes us. We're working on it. There's something for you to do, even if it's just being in a place with other people. Because if Gayle and I had showed up today to do the show and there was nobody on the other side of the glass, I'd feel really weird. I know there's people watching, thousands of people watching at any given time. So I will just, but I can't see them. The people, a dozen or so that are on the other side of the glass right now, just them being here, and there's the guys in the back who make the show happen. But just seeing other people here wanting to participate and do good stuff is enough to make this all feel like home and worthwhile. On that note, You ready for more calls?
Ready.
Who do you want? Ron in San Antonio, you're on with Gayle and Matt.
Hey, what's going on, Matt and Miss Lady? What's your name is, Miss Lady?
I'm Gayle.
How you doing, Miss Gayle? I got a question.
Hit it, Ron.
I'm kind of 50-50, so I called my uncle, and he gave me a good question. So I said, I got to ask Matt, because I just found out about you last night, looking at a couple of your debates. So
You discovered me last night, and you already have a question.
I got a question, because I watched like 5 hours. I'm a truck driver, so
Oh, wow.
I spend half of my time looking at you last night.
Well, keep your more than half the time looking at the road.
No, I'm talking while I was stopped. But let me say, if there's no God, how do our body work like a machine? It self-heals, and how is the sun and the moon perfect away where it won't kill us? You know what I'm saying? So in that case, it got to be a creator, because we technically designed. You know, it produced milk for the kids. You know, our heart pumps. I mean, everything about us is a design. It's not like a chance.
Yeah.
So wouldn't that mean that there's a creator or something that designed us? It's not probable that the
See, those are two different things. Those are two different things. When you say, wouldn't that mean that there's a creator or something that designed us? See, we are the things that evolved and survived. If we didn't produce milk for our offspring and that was necessary, we would die. If we weren't on a planet that was at the right location to sustain the sort of life that we are, we would not have continued to exist. We are what was molded by the physical facts of reality. There doesn't need to be a designer. It's not like, humans didn't exist from the outset. At one time, there weren't any living things. And so there's a really good quote, which I'm going to read you because it's so good. It's my absolute favorite ever, discussing this notion of fine-tuning. And it's, of course, from Douglas Adams. And on the subject of fine-tuning, this is rather as if you imagine a puddle waking up one morning and thinking, this is an interesting world I find myself in, an interesting hole I find myself in. Fits me rather neatly, doesn't it? In fact, it fits me staggeringly well. Must have been made to have me in it. This is such a powerful idea that as the sun rises in the sky and the air heats up, and as gradually the puddle gets smaller and smaller, frantically hanging on to the notion that everything's going to be all right because this world was meant to have him in it, was built to have him in it, so the moment he disappears catches him rather by surprise. I think this may be something we need to be on the watch for. Now, human beings were able to think, and so we look around, and it seems like we are perfectly suited, or at least reasonably suited, for the world that we live in. And yet, this reverses the actual facts in the same way that the puddle example was. That hole wasn't designed for that puddle. That puddle of water filled that hole, just as humans and the many other animal species fill certain holes in the process that is biodiversity of life. And so if we looked at it and said, oh, well, why do we produce milk for our offspring if there's no creator? Well, why do we need milk for our offspring in the first place? Why would a God create things, not to mention, cancer and other things like that? But if you just look at it from our position and say, oh, it looks like everything was made for us, and deny the possibility that we were made to fit in here by completely natural processes, then you've ruled out one of two potential explanations from the outset. And to me, that's a horrible mistake, especially if the one you're ruling out is the one for which there is mountains of evidence, and the one that you're ruling in, there's no evidence.
So, they got proof of the Noah flood now, right? They say
they don't.
On top of mountains and stuff.
Yeah, no, they actually don't. Every couple of years, somebody claims they found Noah's Ark, but even if they found a boat that fit Noah's Ark's description and everything else, that certainly wouldn't prove a flood or a global flood. And the science shows that there couldn't possibly have been a global flood, as does history and all the civilizations that seem to be blissfully unaware that they were flooded and destroyed.
Oh, Okay, Matt, you come with the little slide stuff. But so like, let's say the atmosphere. Ain't it like a radiation belt or something up there, like keeping us here for the sun radiation won't burn us up? I mean, don't you think that's like a coincidence, or it got to be something that's put all this here? I mean,
hey, Ron?
It only makes sense though, Matt.
Ron, if the atmosphere went away, we'd die.
Exactly. So that's how you know that somebody put it there to keep us from dying. That's what I'm saying. Because if that was the case, you could live on Saturn. I mean,
so
why
Ron,
a specific place that? What's up?
If somebody filled in that hole, there wouldn't be a puddle.
Well, I mean, that's true.
This is the thing: is if you look at this and you say, "I need an explanation for why this is," and you can't come up with one, well, yeah, you can come up with any sort of magical explanation, but you don't have any evidence for magic.
Don't you do magic?
Yeah, I do. Leisure domain.
That magic exists because you do it, man. That's what I'm saying.
My magic isn't real. They are tricks, you see. So I don't have any evidence of any real magic.
But I wouldn't know that it's a trick unless you told me. You know what I'm saying? If I seen you do it, I automatically think it was real, right?
So are you watching? Are you watching the TV? Can you see the screen?
I can see you on my little cell phone while I drive. Yeah, I'm looking at you.
Oh, well, not while you're driving. But if I were to take my finger and pull it off a little bit like that and put it back on, would you think that I had done something supernatural or that it was a trick?
I mean, if you pulled your damn finger off and you put that damn finger back on, that is supernatural as hell. I mean, if it went right back on, yeah, you did that supernaturally, man. Because that ain't possible.
Well, I just did it, and I'm telling you it's a trick, and it's a trick I could teach you. Stop assuming that if you just keep assuming that because you don't know how it was done that it must have been supernatural, you're going to be in a very, very dangerous position because there's tons of stuff that you don't know. There's tons of stuff all of us don't know. And if we just assume that it must be a supernatural explanation, then that not only makes us likely to be wrong, as we have no evidence of any supernatural explanation, but if you think you know what the answer is, don't you stop looking for the right answer?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah,
Just
so
like people say
how do we...
real, even though it's not.
Wait, what'd you say?
I said, even though people say gravity real, even though it's not. I mean, that's another fallacy, but people believe that.
How is it that you've come to the conclusion that gravity isn't real?
Because the Earth's flat.
Yeah. Bye. I'm just going to assume that he was just having fun. The problem is that that's not a safe assumption. The problem is that there are actually people who are convinced that the Earth is flat. There are people who are convinced that gravity isn't real, that we didn't land on the moon, that climate change isn't real. All of these things that science can confirm. Now, science doesn't ever make proclamations about truth. Science just gives the best current explanations that explain all of the available facts, and all findings of science are tentative. This is a strength of science, and yet religions and religious people and others want to portray it as a weakness. Well, once upon a time, we were told by the scientists that X was true, and then they came out later and said something else. So see, you can't trust science. Wrong. What you can trust is that when science discovers that that's wrong and gives you the new, updated model, that this is them self-correcting and providing you with better, more accurate information. It's not like after we discovered that the Earth is an oblate spheroid, like all of the other bodies in the solar system, that we suddenly found scientific evidence that, nope, we're the only ones on a flat disk. I mean, this is not only the height of arrogance of viewing your special position in the world, but for people who don't understand the principles of science, for people who haven't bothered to look into it, to just be running around pronouncing that, well, you can't trust science. Well, you know what? Even if science was only 3% trustable, that's 3% more than any fucking religion has ever been. But Dale in Ohio, you're on with Matt and Gayle. How are you?
Hey, man. How you doing?
Mixed bag. How are you?
Not bad. Been a weird day.
I hear you.
I was just wondering, several times I've tried to post what I found on Google Earth on different videos, and they're always blocked. So now I'm calling you directly to ask you. My channel name is Hush Whisperer, and I'm the guy who claims to have found the Garden of Eden. It has the whole picture story on our planet, and I'm wondering, how do you discredit that?
Well, I haven't seen... you want me to answer it?
Before you saying it, yes, I do, but I'm sorry, I got something else to say.
Okay.
Before you say something, when I say the whole picture story, I'm talking about all the characters, how it happened, why it happened, everything. Now I'll listen.
Okay. I have no idea what you're talking about because I'm not familiar with your website or your videos or anything else, so I couldn't possibly debunk anything. Did you find the Garden of Eden just outside of Kansas City, Missouri? Because that's where the Mormons say it is.
Nope. It's actually, the location is Baroun Dam in Iran. Why don't you go look at my video and you'll see the whole thing?
Because they don't care?
Well, then how will you ever know the truth when you finally do hear it?
Well, here's the thing.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
You know, you've got all the answers, you say, but how are you going to know?
No, sir. Accusing me of saying I have all the answers after I've repeatedly, in this episode and in every other episode, advocated
for everything that's
are you going to
tonight, sir? So I'm just wondering.
Are you going to let me talk, or am I going to hang up on your ass?
I don't want you to hang up. I just want.
I don't care what you want. Goodbye, Dale. So here's the thing. For whatever reason, we had the phones drop, and so Dale was actually like the last caller. I don't know exactly what's going on, but if somebody's been trying to call in and couldn't get through, you've got 13 minutes. Let me address this real quick. If you find a video of me ever saying I have all the answers in anything other than a sarcastic, joking sense, I'll quit this show. Never have I suggested anything like that. As a matter of fact, I've repeatedly suggested the opposite. Repeatedly in this one, I don't know. The mere fact that I've acknowledged that the right answer is quite frequently, I don't know, in this show alone, means that you're not going to find any case where I could seriously be suggesting that I have all the answers. Now, did I respond to some rather simplistic questions, things that I've spent more time studying than perhaps a caller has? You bet. However, now all the phone lines are full. And we're not going to have time to get to all of them. My apologies to everyone in the back and those of you who just called, but we'll do what we can. Here's the issue with this. This caller thinks that they've discovered the Garden of Eden. Now, when he asked why I wouldn't go watch it, and I said it's because I didn't care, I'm kind of mostly joking. How will you know the truth when it's presented? Really, really good question. And the answer is you evaluate the evidence and you come up with the best model that you can. However, not every crackpot theorem that somebody comes up with, if I went and spent all my time investigating, sometimes somebody said they found Noah's Ark or the Garden of Eden or the secret of the universe or the correct interpretation of this passage or the correct interpretation of that passage or this religion that must be the true one, I'd never get anything done. And so, because I also don't have any expertise in that particular area, you should be submitting your videos and your evidence to the people who do have expertise in that area. And then they will write a paper on this at some point, perhaps get it peer-reviewed. Maybe a major news media source will pick it up, and you will then be the person who discovered the truth about the Garden of Eden. And that, when it has enough legs for me to care about, I will go and investigate and either agree with it when the evidence supports it or point out why I don't agree with it. That's the way it works. That's the way it works being a reasonable human being. But what you've done is convinced yourself that you found the Garden of Eden and then called into a Atheist Experience TV show where neither of us are scientists, neither of us have any expertise on the Garden of Eden, neither of us have seen your thing, and smugly sat there and suggested that we need to spend time debunking you. Well, no, we fucking don't. Sorry to burst your bubble, But your Nobel Prize does not begin with a call to the atheist experience. You should actually do the work required to get your view, the people assessing it that it deserves. And right now, I'm convinced that it's getting exactly as much attention as it deserves. And no matter how many times you call in to, okay, smarty pants, Mr. Know-it-all, please tell me why my model's wrong when I haven't even seen it, you're never going to get any more credibility for your model that way. You're going about this all wrong. And because you're going about it all wrong, that makes me even less interested because it tells me about how you think. And that tells me how likely it is that you have cracked the code.
Sad.
Anyway, well, we'll give it a whirl here. Mojo in the UK, you're on with Gayle and Matt.
Hi there.
Hey.
I just wanted to talk to you about intelligent design and how the atheist scientists today are really stopping the progress of science by rejecting it before regarding it.
They're stopping the progress of science? Because intelligent design is not science.
Why do you say that?
So this proposition is a speculative exercise that has not and potentially cannot produce evidence in support of it. And as an unfalsifiable proposition, it's disqualified from being science. Now, if in fact they have evidence for intelligent design, that's what they could actually demonstrate. But that's not what happens.
Have evidence for
intelligent design. We don't. We have evidence for we fit in a puddle.
No. When we say we have evidence for intelligent design, we're talking about, for example, we live in the information age. We can look at evidence, uniform evidence from experience, uniform evidence from just everyday things that we can see that nature never produces anything with any kind of semiotic quality to it. This is what we mean by when we say intelligent design is a valid scientific point of view to have.
Yeah.
But then you have the atheist scientists who aren't able to even think about or even assess this idea or this.
Well, that's absolute garbage because there are plenty of atheist science who have thought about it. And one of the big issues is here, how could you falsify intelligent design?
Of course you could.
I didn't say you couldn't. I asked a question. How can you falsify intelligent design? I didn't presume that you couldn't.
There's no need to raise your voice.
I tell you what, there's no need to continue this call because we have 8 minutes left and I got another caller. So Oliver in Washington, you're on with Gayle and Matt.
Yes, hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Be warned, I raised my voice.
I watched you on YouTube for a few weeks. I appreciate your straightforwardness and honesty. I'm very thankful for your show. So I wanted to thank you for taking my call, and I was looking for some guidance. I was not raised very religiously. My younger sister and I were not, even though we were baptized as Catholic as infants, and then my parents got divorced, so I didn't really have a very religious upbringing. And I was fine with that. I cared about people, and it never made much sense to me, this whole religions causing war and hating the gay people. It never made much sense to me. My stepfather came into the picture when I was about 9, and he's a Gnostic missionary, so that kind of confused things for me. I didn't get into Christianity until I was an adult. He wouldn't allow any of that. So I got pretty confused, and as time went by, I just saw how things just didn't make much sense. And I eventually figured, I guess I'm a doubting believer, or maybe just a person that has atheist tendencies. And I would like some guidance because I'm not sure exactly what my belief is with God. And I think I have a problem understanding the word belief itself. I always thought that belief meant not knowing, but I've heard your videos on YouTube recently. Belief and knowledge are related, and I would like some clarity on that.
Sure. The way I use the terms, which I think I depart from some strict philosophical things on occasion, because to me, when I talk about belief, Belief is the state of being convinced that a proposition is true or likely true. That's it. You know, here's the proposition, the sky is blue. Do you believe that? Yes. Or except for obviously when it's not. But pick something out. You know, if I let go of this pen, is it going to fall to the table? I believe that that's the case. Now, you can believe things and be to varying degrees of confidence. And I think that when we talk about knowledge, the philosophical definition, the most common one, is that knowledge is justified true belief. So it means in this set of things that are beliefs, some of them are true, and some of those are also where you have a justification to believe that it's true. You know, like if it turns out when I let go of this pen, it turned out to be true, was I actually justified in that, or was it just happenstance that I got it right? Knowledge is important in the sense that it's about the things that we are aware of, the study of epistemology. How do you know what you know, or what is your confidence? But by and large, when people say they know something, what they mean most often, I think, is they really, 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 really believe it. And as a matter of fact, I've described knowledge as being a belief held to such a high degree of confidence that it would be worldview altering to find out that it's wrong. Like if right now I believe that Gayle is a real person sitting next to me. If she vanished right now, then my belief would clearly not be true, or I would have to come up with some other explanation. But it would certainly alter my worldview if Gayle disappeared. Don't ever disappear, Gayle.
I won't.
But so that's kind of where we are, where I am with belief and knowledge.
Thank you. That does clarify a bit more for me, because I don't believe in the biblical God for sure. I think a lot of that stuff is horrible. Didn't make sense to me. All the horrible stuff and contradictions. How can you love a God that's gonna do and all that negative stuff that you've gone over many times? So I like the religious people. I just didn't agree with them. And so I just kind of went my own way. And as more time went by, I just kind of got more and more distant. Yep. I like the people, whether they're religious or not. But I noticed that I feel like I'm going more of an atheist route. But I feel like I have a security blanket of still believing in a God. And I've come to find out that definitely not the biblical God or religious God. But I would also like some clarification on, I guess, what I might be believing there.
You picked the perfect day to call in.
Hey, Oliver, it's Gayle. Oliver, the first thing I want to say is you are not alone in these questions, and you're not alone in this journey. And my suggestion, answering your questions, there's more than we can do in the remaining couple of minutes on the show, but let me encourage you to call in to Recovering from Religion. Even if you feel like you've sort of discarded a lot of the beliefs, and I understand you like the social part and you like the people, but even if you think you've made it past some of the beliefs, some of these are still sticking with you. If you'll chat in on the internet or call in to 184, I doubt it, there's agents, trained agents that are standing by that would love to have this conversation with you. They're not going to tell you what to believe. They may offer you some resources. They're stimulated by conversation just like you are.
They're not going to debate you like I would.
No, they're not going to debate you. They're going to provide some resources. We would love to have you call in. You can also join our online community where you can have this conversation with other people who share the same doubts and questions as you.
And I hate to cut it short, but we have like 1 minute left in the show, and there's one quick call I want to address really quickly.
Okay.
But by all means,
for your time.
Try to reach out to Recovering from Religion, 184, I doubt it. Also the website. But feel free to call us back and let us know how things are going. And if you have more questions, I just apologize because we're really short on time.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Oliver.
Thanks. Last call. Guillermo, I'm told that your question is, Matt, you say, oh my God, doesn't that mean you believe? Is that your question?
Yes.
No, it doesn't mean I believe. It doesn't mean I believe at all.
So why do you say it?
Because it's a phrase, it's a colloquialism. And for the same reason that I say, God damn it, because I'm not going to give up all the good curse phrases to religious folks.
So is that like being agnostic, that you just don't know what there is? You're just saying, oh my God, whatever whatever God there is?
No,
Or
it's
whatever?
just a phrase like when I say "holy cow," that doesn't mean I'm Hindu.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, man.
Okay.
On that note, thank you to the guys on the other side of the wall who make the show happen, all of you on the other side of the glass, and everybody else. We're going to get some eating going on. Remember, next Saturday is the Atheist Community of Austin's annual Back Cruise. Dave Warnock will be down here. There will be, you can find out more information at the website. The lecture part will be at Trinity United and open to the public. And then we'll have, all sorts of evil debauchery, I'm sure, is what will be reported in the Christian Times. We'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.